What up, watch peeps? I've sung the praises of Zelos many times, so I'll try not to sound repetitive, as you all know the deal. They push the boundaries of design and give you a lot of, not just watch, but originality for your money. Now, I've done a first look video of this one a while back. Now that I've had it for a little while, I'd like to revisit it and do a more thorough review. So let's get to it. I'm Pete, and we are chilling with watches. Wrist check. I'm wearing my Tuna mod on Silicone Isofrane from AliExpress. I don't usually like silicone straps that much, but this one is comfortable and I think it goes well with this watch. Let's see what we got here. So, that's a sleeve. This actually goes on here, but they're really tight, so I took it off ahead of time. And Zelos, you always get these super cool wooden boxes. I rave about them all the time, so I won't do that again. But inside, you get something slightly different. If you've bought a bunch of Zelos, you'll know in the past you've always gotten a watch roll. Some really nice cool ones. I have canvas ones, leather ones. But in here, you get more of this kind of little portfolio. And I'm not sure exactly how this is supposed to work. This is kind of how I did it. Inside you have your Zelos warranty card, which is a bronze warranty card. It's kind of etched, really cool. And I put my extra links in here, but that is it as far as accessories. There was nothing else in here. A pretty cool portfolio. That seems like something that could be reusable. Let's take a look at this HH3, because this thing is gorgeous. So size-wise, these hammerheads are 44mm divers. This one has been redesigned to be slimmer in this latest rendition than the previous, which I have one of, so we will do a comparison a little later on. Color-wise, these came in, with Zelos, so a whole bunch of colors. Besides this orange I have here, there was brown, blue, white, green, and I believe red. Price on these, the retail is $4.50. Usually Zelos does one of those kind of progressive pricing schemes where the earlier you order, you get a better deal. So at $4.50, I think this is an absolute bargain. I know some are going to point out that the NH35 movement is a limiting factor for price, but I'm not one of those people who thinks the price of a watch is completely determined by its movement, at least not in this case, when the rest of the build is so much of the final product and what you are paying for. At first look, this big angular case obviously jumps out at you. This is not a vintage reissue minimalist case design in any way. It is the opposite. It's a thoroughly modern chunk of a watch, but in the best way possible. Obviously, this dial color is something to behold. It was the most popular colorway, and with good reason. It grabs your attention and holds it as it changes from orange to copper to amber and even brown in low lighting situations. Now, the applied markers and the minute track provide a nice depth to the dial. I love the hour markers. I think they are perfectly proportioned, as are the hands. They match each other and provide a ton of space for the insane lume that we'll look at in just a bit. A 6 o'clock date window maintaining symmetry. Beautiful large tooth bezel with a lumed ceramic bezel insert that also has some orange in it that just kind of pulls the whole thing together. Zelos bezel action is some of the best in the biz. The least play of almost maybe any bezel I've handled. Just the right amount of tension. Every click feels the same. There's no variance from one click to the next. You have a big old fat lumed crown at 4 o'clock. The case is a combination of brushed and blasted, giving you a very tool watch look, but still providing some contrast, as best seen here on the case sides. Now, these case sides, they're flat through the middle with turn down on the ends that tuck the bit of protruding case back kind of up underneath, not really drawing attention to it. The case back itself is really pretty. It's done in kind of this deep relief. You got hammerheads that are all polished, but everything is very smooth and comfortable. There's no sharp edges on here whatsoever. Now, it has 22mm lugs, and it uses solid male end links on a hexad bracelet, which I think goes perfect with this watch head. And it's not just any hexad though, this is a really good hexad. It tapers from 22 down to 20, which a 2mm taper is fine here as the weight is needed since this is a larger watch, but it's fully articulating bracelet, no fake 3 links here. So this thing is going to drape and contour to the shape of your wrist, no problem. Now the clasp is one of the best around, very similar to what's in use by Christopher Ward. I love the design on the outside, 2-button release, but it does have an on-the-fly micro adjust via this button underneath here, which is really nice, especially in the summertime. All in all, this is a beautiful, unique tool watch with some flair. Let's throw it on the Timegrapher and see how it's running. Well, what are you going to say about that? That may be the best running NH35 I have ever seen. It's basically spot on, a bumping high amplitude, and only 0.1 milliseconds of beat error. Doesn't get much better than that. Going over the dimensions, we are looking at a 44mm case straight across. The lug to lug is 48.6 millimeters. That will be added to slightly by these protruding male end links. This one comes in at 15 millimeters thick, and as I mentioned, it has 22mm lugs. Going over some of the other specs, we are looking at a very slightly domed sapphire crystal, a combination of BGW9 and C3 Lume. It's running a Seiko NH35 movement and has 300 meters of water resistance. On this bracelet, sized for my 7¼ inch wrist, it comes in at a hefty 211 grams. Let's throw it on wrist and see how it looks. And here is how it looks on my 7¼ inch wrist. As you can see, it's 15 millimeters height is not terrible as it does sit nice and close to the wrist. I think that kind of case shape downplays that longer lug to lug and 44mm diameter. It's a big watch, but I think it wears really well. Let's take a look at it side by side some other watches. The first thing I wanted to show you is how it compares to a previous generation of this model. Now this old one is actually 43.6 millimeters across. That's 0.4 millimeters smaller than the new one. Now the lug to lug is exactly the same on both of these, but the older one is 17.1 millimeters thick. That was the driving force of the design of this new one. Now they took that height out of the crystal, the bezel, and the mid case, as you can see here, and it makes a big difference on the wearability. Now this old one also has the fully articulating bracelet, and it does have an on-the-fly micro adjust clasp, although it does use a slightly different style of construction. I think the best comparison are going to be some other of the larger Seikos. Now, the Samurai comes in at about 43.5 across at the bezel. Pretty similar on the case. If anything, I think it's a little less. Now, Zelos uses a small dial opening, which is a hard thing to, you don't get to say that very often when comparing it against a Seiko, but I think that shows that it makes it wear and come across as a little smaller than it actually is. Let's take a look at it next to a Turtle, which is actually almost 45 across. And I think this is a better comparison. These two probably wear very similarly. I think even they both kind of have that same case shape, almost the same across. Again, that smaller orange part of the dial in use by the Zelos gives the illusion of a smaller watch. Lastly, let's take a look at it next to the SKX, of course, since everybody is familiar with this watch, at 42.5 millimeters or so. And I think you can see the Zelos wears slightly larger than the SKX. All right. Lastly, let's take a look at that combo of C3 and BGW9 I've been talking about.
Keep the Lume.
Now that's a torch. If you've never seen a Zelos in person before, the Lume is next level. You can see that chapter ring is BGW9 in blue. The rest of it is all done in C3. and it is just bonkers bright. Even that logo is loomed, as is the crown. Just super cool. The Zelos Hammerhead HH3. For me, this watch is an absolute hit, especially in this colorway. I hope we get to see more of it, maybe in some of their other models. If you like chunky divers and aggressive modern design, it doesn't get much better than this, especially now that they've slimmed it down. Alright, before I let you guys go, sneaker check. I'm wearing my Jordan 1 lows, and that's it. I'm out. Alright, if it's not too much trouble, please like, subscribe, and come back next time. Peace.